All our seams at Congoleum are going to be overlapped and double cut. So a lot of installers will handle sheet goods by straight edging both sides and actually putting those seams together before they do anything else, and that's not actually the recommended process. What I'm going to do now that I have this lined up is I'm going to overlap and double cut it, but I'm also going to take a piece of scrap to create some pressure at the seam, because our seam sealer is going to be inserted into that seam cut. So the whole entire length of the seam, you are going to want to place a piece of scrap underneath. And if you do a lot of sheet goods, it wouldn't be a bad idea to hold some of these pieces on your truck for when you actually have to do this. Now, I will set the bulk of this piece to my straight edge side. In other words, if I am setting up on the seam, if I have a wide straight edge, I want enough there so it's not teeter-tottering off of this end. Okay. So again, my seam moved a little bit. Double check this end. Now, the next question is, where on a small, almost pencil line, grout line on this wood pattern are we going to be with our cut? And most of you guys your natural answer would be to try to go down the middle of that, especially if you're straight edge and abutting. But the reason we don't straight edge and butt is because there's no such thing as a real flat floor, and your knife is going to bounce up and down and create gaps and tightness all along the seam. When you overlap and double cut, you're getting a pencil mark. I'm sorry, you're getting a puzzle piece almost. So whatever your knife does, even if your straight edge moves, what's going on underneath is going to match it. So you're not going to have those areas of tightness and looseness. And I inadvertently said pencil mark because I'm still thinking about this little grout line. So now that I know I'm totally matched up, I'm not going to cut into that grout line. I'm going to stay off the top of it. So basically this scrap piece that comes off will have that grout line or that pencil mark line on there, and the one on the floor will stay on the floor. So using obviously a longer straight edge than this and a brand new sharp blade, and if you unwrap a brand new blade and are making a seam, you should wipe it off with a rag because they are oiled to keep them from rusting. And you have to cut through both pieces, making sure that your blade is straight up and down. If you stop, keep the blade buried in the material. Continue on. When you get to the very end, you're going to have to turn around and come back. I usually will do that left-handed because obviously I'm at the wall, and I'm not going to be able to cut all the way up the wall. But I'll get as close to it as I can before I have to turn around. Okay, so like I said, this piece, this scrap piece, has that line on it, that dark line that I cut off. This is the other scrap piece coming off. And of course you would have to remove our extra piece of material that created what you'll see as a snap in. So that tightness, remember this is either loose laid or fastened to the floor. This side is cut in and fastened the way you want it, and now you come back and you can almost hear that crackling into place. Okay. And so that's a pattern match finish seam. That's what it's supposed to look like. Now, no matter how you have this floor installed, the seams in air step have to be down to the floor or fastened to the floor, and you can do that in either rolling on an adhesive or using our quick stick tape. So let me show you that process. So I'm just going to roll this over and put something heavy to hold it, and you guys see that I have that long on the floor. You want to try not to crease your product if you can help it. Okay. That should hold it. So quick stick tape is designed to work immediately. So I have my line drawn. I'm going to take quick stick tape and center it. Give it a little bit of a roll. Once it's rolled, you can go ahead and release the release liner. Just kind of spear it a little bit. You can see that quick stick tape is a double-sided tape. You can see right through it as a clear carrier. Interestingly enough, the adhesive to the floor is a solvent-based adhesive, which works great on concrete. The top adhesive is a PSA or pressure sensitive that's designed to work with our Ultratech backing system. So the first piece should get rolled over. And remember, you're only rolling this with a heavy roller if you're full spreading. On loose layer perimeter here, you can use a broom to make sure all this air is out. Your second piece down. Shift it a little bit on me. And with that, in the field, with the tightness you created, you should be able to roll this in. Now this compression that you built into this will actually, because this is a felt-based and a non-fiberglass product, that will compress right down there, even on that short. So in that short tape will hold that little bit of fullness. So all I have to do is give that a hand roll, and now that seam is ready for seam sealing. Okay, and the Airstep products are seam sealed with SU-106 seam sealer. This is designed for products that have Scotchgard and urethane, which our product does. It's a no-stick surface. You will look to the date on the top, which is a use by date. And as long as your seam sealer is before that date, you're using it before that date, it's good to go. The kit has 2 Scotch-Brite pads, applicator bottle, and there's a little pin. And you might want to have that. It's good to clean out the tip or even modify the tip if you had to. There's a part A and B, and there is a dowel that will help us prepare the edge of this seam to take seam sealer, because the Scotchgard doesn't allow normal seam sealer to stick to it. There's certainly a set of directions in here. One of the things that the directions will tell you is locate part B, shake that part B up prior to mixing. Okay? All right, so once part B has been shaken up, you can open it and part A, and we want you to mix both 100% of both bottles together. Now this kit is designed to cover about 70 linear feet at 1/8 inch, and you may have just a doorway seam, but we don't want you to do tailgate chemistry on this, because once you open these bottles, the chemical is exposed to the air and will not work properly the second time, so you really have to blow the whole kit out. And I normally, actually when I'm doing this mixing, I'll normally step outside. I won't even do this over a customer's sink in case there's spillage. This is still a chemical, and it does have some VOCs when it's first open. So a well ventilated area is best. So part A into B, 100% of both bottles emptied. Put this cap on. And I would use some kind of rag or something just to cover the tip like this and give it a little shake. You really don't want this in contact with your skin if you can help it. And you don't have to shake it for too long. If you develop some bubbles on the top, you're going to let those gas off. And again, this little pin goes right to the top. If you, for some reason, want to lessen the amount of seam sealer on the bead, you can take a pliers to that and tighten this up, and it'll give you a little bit of a less of an application. On lighter colors, you might want to do that. Now, like I said, this seam sealer is not going to stick to our Scotch guarded surface, so the next thing we have to do is prep that surface over the top of where I cut. The other reason why you want to be out of the small grout lines is because of the size of that dowel. It doesn't allow for that the pad to get into where it needs to be. So I drop that. Now listen, I wrap that dowel and I'm just lightly pinching it. With moderate pressure down, you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 back and forth strokes. When you move your straight edge, make sure you're overlapping where you last were. You may see a little bit of a color change there. I don't seam seal that now, simply because it's has dust on it. You can see dust on the pad. I need to remove that from the floor. A little bit of just room temperature water on a rag is going to do that. It'll remove all the contamination. You might get some green pad on that. And then, since this is a chemical-based product, you want to actually have that dry. Now, if you've done a full spread with the trowel, if you have any squeeze through of adhesive coming out of that, you have to take a hook knife or something and clear that, because the bonding adhesive to the floor is not mixed with the seam sealer. Okay, they kind of repel each other. Okay, last but not least, I'm going to apply seam sealer. What I like to do usually is get an idea how loose that's running, because sometimes two-parters can be pretty watery. So I want to try to get a small line like that, but I also have to take my finger on the bottle and press this little, what I call a whale's tail or fin into the cut. So you locate your cut, you push down, you actually want to see that cut opening. Now that's introducing seam sealer into the cut edges of the product, and the seam sealer will be melting the product together with the stuff on top, just kind of creating a cap, which will stick now because we use the green pads to prepare the seam. So you continue that all the way down. The SU-106 is really an overnight or a 16-18 hour fully dry seam sealer. So you want to protect that from traffic. And if you're worried about traffic, a lot of times when I leave the job site, I'll take this tube and cut it in half and bridge it over the top of my seam with a little timestamp on it saying don't remove till tomorrow, 6 hours after the time I finish my last part of seam sealing. And that's how you do that.